Hello, everyone. I'm Arthur Cade, and welcome to Inspector Claim Talk with Joe Denneler. I'm joined today by Joe Denneler, who, for those who may not know, is the preeminent home inspection litigation attorney in the country. This man knows everything about the arena we're talking about. And today's arena specifically is, Joe, we're going to be talking about agreements that every home inspector needs. This is incredibly important. And I want to throw the ball to you. Why do home inspectors need agreements?
Well, first and foremost, the agreement sets the tone and sets the relationship between you and your client. So we're going to talk about a few different types of contracts today, but the main contracts are the ones between you and the person you're going to provide your services for. Now, in some states, you're required to use a written agreement, but I'm going to tell you that you should be using one in every state, regardless of where you're working, because you need that to let your clients know what it is you're going to do, what you're not going to do, and how you're going to do that job.
Before we jump into the actual bones of the agreements and the structuring of it all, I want to give people a little background around you, because this is our first episode that we're taping for this series. How did you actually break into this and really become a specialist in this specific field?
About 20 years ago, when I was a young attorney at my first law firm, we got a line of business for defending home inspectors in litigation from an insurance carrier. And because I grew up in a family that were contractors and had a little bit of experience with the bones of a house, it fell to me to handle these cases. And what I soon learned is that it's very interesting work. It's very satisfying work. And I feel like I was doing something good for the most part when I'm representing home inspectors, because I felt like I was representing my family.
So what contracts should inspectors be using to best insulate them from risk?
Sure. There's basically 4 types of agreements that every home inspector needs. Now, 3 of them apply to everybody, 1 doesn't. I'll explain that in a second. The basic home inspection agreement is the primary agreement between you and your client, whether that's a buyer or a seller. So that's number 1. After those, we have ancillary service agreements. So if you're offering services like radon testing, water testing, well testing, termite or wood destroying organism inspections, all those things should have their own agreement. Then there's subcontractor agreements. If you're the type of home inspection company that brings others to the job, where you might farm out some of those ancillary services, for example, or if you're using subcontracted home inspectors to do the work, you need to have a written agreement with them that sets out the scope of that work, how they're going to be compensated, and also offers you some specific protections as the business owner. And then the final type of agreement would be an employment agreement. If you are employing people in your business, not using subcontractors, then you should have a written employment agreement with those people outlining what they're there to do, and also, again, to provide you certain protections as the business owner, particularly with regard to your confidential information in your client list.
You'd mentioned ancillary services. Why are inspection agreements for ancillary services important?
Because they're usually much different than the scope of the home inspection. We all know generally a home inspection, whether you're doing it in Missouri or California, it's always involves a visual inspection of readily accessible systems and components of the property. But with the ancillary services, sometimes we go a little bit beyond that visual inspection. So to give you an example, with radon testing, generally you're gonna leave a piece of equipment there that's gonna take measurements. It's going to be brought back. You're going to get the results and they're going to go out. If you're doing mold testing, you're going to swab most of the time, or you're going to take air samples, and then those are going to go to a laboratory. So you're doing, in most cases, more invasive, specific work on those ancillary services. And a lot of them have their own specific way they should be done or way you do them. And so you want to have certain protections in there. And then finally, in some states, you're not allowed to use a limitation of liability provision in your inspection agreement with your client. However, not all of those states regulate whether you can use that in the ancillary agreement. And so it's better than if you have a separate agreement for that service where you can limit your liability in that regard.
So should inspectors have agreements with third parties who perform ancillary services where the inspector doesn't?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, that would be a subcontractor agreement. And what we're looking for there, not just to set up, here's what you're going to do for me, here's what I'm going to pay you, here's how you're going to get the work. More importantly, for the business owner, that agreement should also have protections in there. If this subcontractor is carrying insurance, you want to make sure that you're the additional insured. Now, I'm going to tell you, it's relatively foolish not to have a subcontractor that has their own coverage. If they're performing that service, you don't want to be financially responsible if they make a mistake. And so the subcontractor agreement should have a provision in there requiring that they have their own insurance, that your company is named as an additional insured. In addition to that, it should have some protections for your business. If you're giving them confidential information, they should keep that confidential and not release it. And that should last even after you stop using them for the work. In addition, there should also be a provision in there that says that they're not allowed to contact your clients, because we don't want them taking your good referral sources because they did a couple of jobs for you. And finally, you may also want to specify how they're going to do the particular service. That sometimes opens you up for some liability because you're directing the work of that subcontractor. But if there's particular things that have to be addressed with regard to that service, that's the agreement you would want to put them in. And I'm going to tell you that if your subcontractor is insured and there's no written agreement between you and them, it's very unlikely their policy is going to provide you any coverage whatsoever. So you have to have that agreement in place.
So what kind of agreements should inspection companies have with independent contractor inspectors that they can use?
Well, the subcontractor agreement, definitely. Now, in our insurance company, our insureds get those for free. But if you're not one of our insureds, then certainly you would want to get that from a lawyer in your state. It should, again, cover you. It should protect you. You're not there to protect the other person. It should set forth what things they're going to do and not going to do. And it should definitely have an insurance agreement and an indemnity and contribution agreement that says specifically, we will defend and hold you harmless for any claims related to that service we're going to provide.
And then what about agreements between the inspection companies and their employee inspectors?
So with your employment agreement, again, now every state's a little bit unique, and that's why we don't just hand out employment agreements for all of our insureds. We encourage you to go to a lawyer in your state who specializes in employment. But the employment agreement ideally should work kind of like the subcontractor agreement. It should set forth the scope of the work this person's going to do, the term, how much they're going to be paid. If there's any bonus involved, that should be in there, and any other benefits, health benefits, 401k, whatever the case may be, that should all be addressed in the agreement. But in addition, it should also have provisions similar to the subcontractor agreement. It should have a restrictive covenant that requires that this employee cannot go out and perform home inspections in the county where you're currently working for a period of time, because you're going to teach this person things about how to do the job successfully. And you want to make sure that you're not teaching somebody to do that, and then they're going to turn around and take your business. And so we want to make sure that you have a restriction there for geography, which is it might be a county, it might be a set of counties, it might be a state, depending on where you are. And the lawyer in your state will be able to tell you how broad you can make that. In addition to all those, it should also specify that they can't contact your referral sources. So if you get the majority of your referrals from real estate brokers and agents, then you definitely want to make sure that they can't contact those people. Ideally, it should say they can't contact anybody they met through working for you for a period of years. And how long that period can be, again, is going to depend on the state.
How aware are home inspectors about the need for these types of agreements?
Well, I'll tell you, so in the 3+ years we've been handling our insurance program, we own the company, so we see everything, right? And I'm going to tell you that there's still a lot of inspectors out there who aren't using agreements when they should. Now, as far as I know, most of the insurance carriers in this industry require that you use at least a home inspection agreement for every service that you do. I do not see many home inspectors using the subcontractor agreements with the subs, and we've tried to help our insureds at least with that by giving them the agreements for free. We're not in business to make money off of these agreements with our insureds. We're in business to protect them. And so we feel like it's our duty to give them something to use in these situations. And the home inspection agreements, I see a wide variety of types. I see a lot that appear to be something that somebody slapped together over a period of years, and maybe they went to some seminars, and eventually they have this giant mishmash of stuff that doesn't really make any sense when you read it together. And so we try to help our insureds by giving them a state-specific inspection agreement to use. That way they know they're using the latest and greatest version. They know it references the standards in their state. But I see a lot of these agreements that people get from the software providers for the report writing. Again, they're trying to give you something, right? It's bare bones, and it's not really specific to any state, but it's something. Well, I'm going to tell you, you're much better off having an actual inspection agreement that's tailored for work in your state. And if you're working in multiple states, you want to make sure you have an agreement for each state.
You've mentioned your insurance product multiple times for this, and I know throughout the course of the series, we'll be delving more and more detail around it. But for those who aren't aware of the product, explain it.
Sure. I am the Chief Claims Officer and General Counsel for Villanova Insurance Partners. And in addition to that company, we own a company we built called Elite Re, and that is our captive insurance carrier. So unlike insurance brokers and agents that most home inspectors deal with, we actually own the insurance. We own the risk. We're responsible for the money on every single policy we put out there. So hundreds of millions of dollars. But because we have that risk, we have control. And so when our insureds need something, we can adapt quickly. Because we own the company, we set the rates, we decide the premium, we decide who's insured and not insured, and we manage each and every claim. And so I've been litigating home inspection cases for 20 years. Every single claim that comes through our company comes to my desk first. And I analyze and determine what's going to happen from there. And then my team of adjusters and attorneys help me effectuate that plan.
I'm going to put myself in the seat of the home inspector. And if I were listening to this, on a scale of 1 to 10, what's the level of importance around putting an agreement in place?
And absolutely every time. And, I'll tell you from a claims perspective, home inspectors do get claims from time to time. And I'm going to tell you, having a lot of experience with this, not all of them have any merit, right? But sometimes they do, or sometimes it's based on confusion. And the easiest way for us to defend a home inspector and to possibly win that case, if it goes to litigation, is within that agreement, because we can build certain defenses in there. And more importantly, if it's written correctly, it will tell the client exactly what you're going to do and not going to do. And so when the client comes and files that lawsuit or arbitration claim for mold and says, well, you didn't find mold and it was there in my house. Well, here's my agreement where I said I wasn't going to do that. And I think it gets rid of, I would say it gets rid of 35 to 40% of the claims that we see can be dealt with these agreements. And that's why we take so much time to prepare them. And that's why we make them available for free to our insureds.
So where does a home inspector begin? Obviously, you guys are one resource, but how does a home inspector actually dive into creating an agreement or agreements of these natures?
If you're not going to use a trusted source like us or InterNACHI, who we also help them with the agreements, and in fact wrote the agreements for InterNACHI that are currently available to all their members. If you're not using those, I'm going to tell you that your best option would be to find a lawyer in your state that knows something about service agreements for real estate professionals. They're going to be few and far between, unfortunately. But if it's also a great opportunity for you to maybe join InterNACHI and take advantage of some of these benefits that they have out there, because in addition to the exclusive insurance program we provide InterNACHI members, which has some really good perks, they give you these things for free. They care about the inspector, and they want to make sure that the inspectors have all the tools they need to be successful. That's why we partnered with them.
For a home inspector who may not know what InterNACHI is, what is it?
They are the biggest and by far the most comprehensive tool an inspector can put in their toolbox to use in their daily life. InterNACHI is a trade association for home inspectors. It's certainly the biggest in the world. They are painstaking in making sure that their members have access to a lot of things for free, because they're interested in their success. And that's really what drew us to create this partnership with InterNACHI we have on the insurance program. And again, we sell insurance to all inspectors, not just InterNACHI members. But if you're an InterNACHI member, there's certain benefits in the insurance that you can't get anywhere else. But that's why we partnered with them, because they really care.
Should a home inspector essentially customize these agreements, each and every deal, each and every situation, or is there some kind of baseline that they can work off of?
The agreements we created for home inspectors are you're able to use them on any job. Now, occasionally you're going to come up to a situation where there might be something unique. For example, you might have a client that says, well, inspect everything, but don't worry about that hall bathroom because we're trashing that. We're going to rip that apart. We're going to redo it. Don't even waste your time. Don't bother with it. In those kinds of situations, you want to make sure that's documented. One in the agreement, and listen, although these things are typed and look very nice when you get them, if you have to write something on them, that's okay. If you have to handwrite something on the job, that's still legal. It's still binding as long as the client initials it. But because ideally, of course, they've signed your agreement before you started that work. And I can't stress that enough. But if something changes the scope of that work, it's fine to write it down and have the client initial it and tack that onto the back of the agreement. It should also show up in your inspection report as well, because I can tell you one thing, these incidents and claims have a long shelf life sometimes. And if somebody comes back to you 2 years after a home inspection, you're not going to remember what you told them, what you said, anything. But if it's written down somewhere, it's going to refresh your memory. And so it's very important to document these things as they come up.
We're obviously seeing record numbers in the real estate industry right now. Everybody is buying and selling their home. Interest rates have been low for so long. For home inspectors, do you see an uptick in A, people wanting to become or becoming home inspectors, and B, in understanding that they need these agreements?
Well, I can tell you from some of our trusted partners, again, InterNACHI, AHIT, the education provider, we know that there's people still going through the processes of training and becoming home inspectors every day. So the community is always growing, and there's still many opportunities for inspectors. I hear from a lot of companies, they're looking for more people, actually. I think that, here in 2022 and for the last year and a half, for those who might watch this later, we've had quite a real estate crunch. And one of the things that's happened with inspectors is they've been forced to do what we call walk and talk inspections, because unfortunately, when the sellers have control, the last thing they want the buyers to have is a good inspection, right? Because it might crash the deal. And so there's a lot of people buying homes right now with no inspections. And so what the home inspection community has tried to do is provide these walk and talk inspections where it's not a full-blown inspection with the big report, but they'll walk through the house and just look for very obvious things and talk a little bit about the systems and components. Now, I know a lot of insurance carriers in this industry have completely balked at that and decided, well, we're not going to cover that. That's not a home inspection, but we're the company of yes. So we felt it was our duty and obligation to our community to provide insurance for people who have to provide that service to put food on their table, because again, if we're not helping you do that, we're not much good to you. So we decided we would cover walk and talk inspections as part of the E&O coverage and prepared a written inspection agreement for just that purpose. And it's tailored uniquely to just deal with you actually walking and talking. And you have to produce a report, but your report can basically be an email confirming that you had the walk and talk inspection. So it's one of those examples of times where if you own the risk and you own your own company, you can adapt and be agile. But more importantly than that, we're doing this to help our insureds, and we want everybody to be working and taking care of their families. And I think any business, any company that serves this industry right now and doesn't adapt to help them make money is doing a disservice.
Are there any specific conditions or things that a home inspector may want or ask for that you just can't get into the agreement, or are they very open-ended?
There's things that I see inspectors try to shoehorn into the agreements that I think are detrimental to the process. And remember, if we want a judge to enforce these, we want to make sure that they're fair, or as fair can be, because we want a judge to look at this and say, this inspector's not trying to take advantage of this person. But there are times where inspectors say to us, for example, well, can I put a provision in there that says, if you sue me and you lose, you have to pay all my legal fees? You can put anything you want in the agreement. In my experience, most judges are going to look at that and say, well, you've completely overstepped here. I find sometimes it poisons the well, and then the judge looks at the whole agreement as unconscionable and decides they're not going to enforce any part of it. And, if you're an inspector in a state where you're allowed to contractually limit your liability to the cost of the service you're providing, and you somehow destroy that power by trying to shoehorn things in there that aren't really fair, well, you're going to have a problem. And so there's also times where people want us to put provisions in the agreements that say that, you can't share this with anybody, not even your attorney or your real estate agent. Well, it's just ridiculous in light of how these transactions work. So yeah, we get odd requests sometimes to shoehorn things in there. And, there's some things that just don't fit.
I'm Home Inspector Joe Smith, and I'm beginning this process. I've taken on a new client. What is the process? What should every home inspector be doing from start to finish with these agreements?
First and foremost, it needs to be signed before you start the work. And what I mean is, when you're a home inspector, unfortunately, you're usually the first person to the job, and you're usually the only person on time for the inspection. And I know that from talking to many inspectors, right? I get it. But you can't start your work until that agreement's signed. So if you're using an electronic system that sends the agreement to your client after the appointment is made, be careful and make sure that that agreement is electronically signed before you go to the job, or at least before you start the work. And a lot of these systems have fail safes in them where they won't issue the report unless the client agrees to the agreement. But you have to remember, in some states, that agreement has to be agreed to before you even put the ladder on the side of the house to start the inspection. So while it's tempting to go and start your exterior inspection and your roof inspection while you're waiting for everybody else to show up, if you don't have that agreement signed in advance, you definitely shouldn't do that. The agreement should always be signed in advance. And I'm going to tell you even further, best practices would be make sure a copy of that agreement is out to that client within 1 business day of them making that appointment for the inspection. We want to give them as much time as possible to read and appreciate what's in that agreement. We don't want there to be ambiguity and confusion. And more importantly, if there is a claim later on, we don't want the client to come back to the court and be able to say, well, you know what? I showed up at the inspection. They were already on the roof. They never told me anything about an agreement. I get there, they throw a bunch of paper in my face. I sign it. I've been signing agreements for the last 2 weeks trying to buy this house. I just want to get my children and my family moved in. We have all these other things to do, and there's that agreement. Yeah, I signed it, and I guess I didn't understand what I read. Well, it becomes a problem when we're trying to defend home inspectors in these cases. But if you get it out to them well in advance of the inspection, they can never say they didn't have enough time to read and appreciate that agreement and to understand what it is that you're going to do, and more importantly, what you're not going to do.
This was our first episode of Inspector Claim Talk with Joe Denneler. Incredible information, Joe, around the importance of agreements for a home inspector. And I can't imagine a home inspector not listening to this and not immediately getting an agreement for each and every client. I mean, just personally, I can hear how valuable it is. Incredible stuff, man.
Thank you. Thank you.
Make sure to continue to check out this ongoing series. It's essential for home inspectors. We'll be covering many more incredible topics around home inspectors and the inspection process and how to best protect yourselves. Joe, thanks for joining.
Thank you.